Hello there. I hope you're doing well tonight. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to my story. My name is Elaine, and this is something I never thought I'd share out loud. You see, for most of my life, I believed that when you raise a child with love, that love will come back to you someday, the same way you gave it. I believed family was a circle. You care for them when they're small, and they care for you when you're old. But sometimes that circle breaks quietly, not with anger, but with a sentence you can never unhear. So, before we begin, if you're sitting somewhere quiet, maybe with a cup of tea or the soft hum of night around you, take a breath with me. This is not a story about revenge. It's a story about realization, and maybe, just maybe, about how love changes shape when people forget how to use it kindly. When I moved in with my son Daniel and his wife, Clara, I thought I was doing the right thing. After retiring, my apartment had become too empty, too silent. Daniel had just bought a new house, and when he said, "Mom, stay with us for a while, there's plenty of room," I believed him. It sounded like kindness, and I wanted to believe kindness still lived in him. The first weeks were peaceful. I helped around the house, cooked dinner when Clara worked late, folded laundry before they came home. Lily, their little girl, filled the evenings with laughter. When she called me grandma, it softened every ache in my bones. For a while, I thought maybe everything was finally how it was meant to be. But homes change sound before they change shape. The laughter between the walls began to fade, replaced by quieter sounds, short sentences, drawn-out sighs, doors closing a little too firmly. I told myself it was normal. Everyone gets tired. But deep down, I recognized the rhythm. I had lived to that beat once before, long ago, with a husband who mistook control for love. Then came the morning that started it all. It was still early, the light gray, the air still heavy with sleep. When my door opened, Daniel stood there, already dressed for work. He didn't knock. He just stepped inside, his tie half done, frustration sitting behind his eyes. "Mom," he said, "get up, the dishes are still in the sink." I blinked half awake. "I'll do them after breakfast." He shook his head. "No, now, Clara isn't responsible for you. You live here, you pull your weight." He said it flatly, like he was stating a household rule. But to me, it landed like a stone in water, heavy, spreading through every quiet corner of my chest. I stared at him, words caught somewhere between shock and shame. Before I could speak, he sighed, not angry, just impatient. "Mom, I mean it. We all need to help out. You can't just stay in bed all morning." And that was it. No yelling, no argument, just a simple, ordinary sentence that ended something inside me. He left soon after, the door closing softly behind him. That gentleness hurt more than if he'd slammed it, because soft words can still bruise. They just leave quieter marks. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at the sunlight moving across the carpet. The room looked different, colder, somehow. This was the same room I had painted with them, the same walls that once smelled of new beginnings. Now it felt like I had overstayed my welcome in my own child's life. Eventually, I went to the kitchen. The sink wasn't even full, just a few plates, 2 cups, a pan. But when I turned on the tap, the water sounded louder than it should have. I washed each dish slowly, not because they were dirty, but because my hands needed something to do besides tremble. Clara came in halfway through. She looked surprised to see me there. "Oh, Elaine, you didn't have to." "I wanted to," I said quickly. She nodded, offered me a small smile that didn't reach her eyes, and poured herself coffee. She didn't mention Daniel, and neither did I. We shared the kind of silence two women understand without needing to explain. After she left for work, I sat down at the kitchen table. For a while, I watched the light crawl across the floor. Every tick of the clock sounded like a question I couldn't answer. How did we get here? When did my son stop seeing me as the person who raised him, and start seeing me as an inconvenience? That evening, he came home cheerful, talking about work, about Lily, about some show they were watching together. He didn't mention the morning. He spoke as though kindness could erase memory, as though politeness could replace apology. I smiled, nodded, said all the right things, but something had already shifted. That night, when the house went quiet, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I thought about my own mother, the way she used to shrink when my father raised his voice, the way she whispered, "Don't make things worse," and I realized, with a sinking heart, that I had become her without even noticing. The next morning, I made breakfast before anyone else woke up. I set the table neatly, poured Daniel's coffee exactly the way he liked it, strong, black, without sugar. When he came in, He smiled faintly. "Thanks, Mom," he said. It was a small word, but I could hear what was missing inside it. There was no warmth, no gratitude, just habit. And in that moment, I knew the truth. Sometimes love doesn't fade. It just changes shape until you can't recognize it anymore. For the rest of the week, I moved like a guest in that house. I cleaned, cooked, folded, stayed out of the way. Clara was kind, in the quiet way women are when they're walking on glass, careful not to make a sound. And Lily, sweet Lily, she was the only one who still looked at me the way I used to look at Daniel, with love that didn't need earning. One afternoon, as I was folding laundry, she asked why I looked sad. I told her I was just thinking. She smiled and said, "Daddy says thinking too much makes you forget to help." Then she ran off, giggling, her small voice echoing down the hallway. That laugh, light, innocent, unknowing, stayed with me all night, because I realized she was repeating what she'd heard, my son's voice, through hers. And that was the moment I knew, if I stayed, I'd be teaching her that this was normal, and I couldn't let that be my legacy. The next few mornings, I tried to pretend everything was fine. I told myself that what Daniel said had just been a moment of irritation, nothing more. But the thing about words is that they don't go away when the moment ends. They echo, quietly, until they start to shape how you move. I found myself waking before dawn, creeping through the house in my slippers, careful not to make noise. I cleaned before anyone noticed dirt, folded towels that were already folded, organized drawers that weren't mine to touch. It wasn't duty anymore. It was fear. Fear of being told again that I was someone's burden. Clara must have noticed. She began thanking me for little things, a cup of tea, the way I swept the porch, as if she could sense that gratitude was the only thing holding me together. She never mentioned Daniel's tone, but sometimes I caught her watching me with eyes full of something that looked a lot like apology. I never asked why. One afternoon, she came home early. Daniel was still at work, and the house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I was sitting at the table, darning a loose hem on Lily's school uniform. Clara dropped her keys on the counter and sighed, her shoulders slumping in a way she never allowed when he was home. "Long day?" I asked. She gave a tired laugh. "A long year." We both smiled at that, and the silence between us felt softer than usual. She poured 2 cups of tea, sat across from me, and said, "You do too much, Elaine. You don't have to." I looked at her hands, the thin gold ring, the faint red mark on her finger, where it pressed too tightly. "I don't mind," I said. "It keeps me busy." She hesitated, then whispered, "You shouldn't have to keep yourself busy to feel wanted." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. It had been years since anyone had spoken to me with that kind of kindness, the kind that sees straight through you. I opened my mouth to respond, but Lily's laughter from the other room broke the spell. Clara smiled faintly, stood, and said, "He means well, you know, Daniel. He just, expects a lot." She didn't look at me when she said it. I didn't tell her that means well is the kindest mask cruelty ever wears. That night, as I lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling fan turning above me and thought about my own mother again. When I was a child, she moved through her marriage the way a ghost moves through walls, visible but never truly seen. She'd once told me, kindness is quieter than anger, but it can hurt just the same. I finally understood what she meant. The next morning, I made pancakes for Lily before school. She sat at the counter, swinging her legs, talking about a class trip. When she was done, she ran to get her backpack, leaving behind a small drawing folded next to her plate. I smiled as I unfolded it. 3 stick figures holding hands, one small, one taller, and one with gray hair. Above them, she'd written me, "Mommy, Grandma." My heart lifted for a moment, until I noticed that there was no 4th figure. "No, Daniel." I folded the paper carefully and tucked it into my sweater pocket. Sometimes children draw what adults refuse to say. Later that day, Daniel came home early. I heard his car in the driveway and felt my chest tighten, though I didn't know why. He walked in briskly, glancing around the kitchen. The counters were spotless, dishes washed, laundry folded. Still, he frowned. "Did Clara go out already?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "She took Lily to dance class." He nodded, distracted. "She's been slacking lately." The words dropped heavy between us. I wanted to defend her, to tell him that Clara was doing her best, that tiredness isn't the same as weakness. But old habits held me silent. It wasn't my place to interfere, not anymore. I had already learned what happened when I spoke up. So I just nodded. He looked at me then, and his expression softened slightly. I didn't mean to sound harsh the other morning, he said. It's just, things are tight. Everyone's stressed. I nodded again, but something inside me shifted. He wasn't apologizing. He was just rearranging the blame so it sounded polite. And I realized, painfully, that I had taught him this language. The language of half apologies and gentle excuses. He had watched me use it with his father. He had learned that love meant staying quiet when someone hurts you. That evening, I sat on the porch after everyone went to bed. The night air was cool, the sky pale with distant stars. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog barked once, then stopped. I closed my eyes and tried to remember the last time Daniel had laughed the way he used to, head thrown back, unguarded, pure. I couldn't. The boy I raised had been swallowed by the man standing in that kitchen, and I had helped feed the hunger that changed him. The next morning, I began to pack. Not openly, not all at once, just little things, a sweater here, a book there. I didn't want a confrontation, I just wanted my peace back, even if it meant finding it somewhere else. Clara noticed. Of course, a few days later, she found me folding clothes and asked quietly, "Are you leaving?" I nodded. Her eyes filled, but she didn't try to stop me. Instead, she whispered, "Maybe it's better, for you, for all of us." Then, after a long pause, she added, "I hope one day he understands what he's losing." I didn't answer. There are some hopes you can't touch without breaking them. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window and watched the house across the street, a young couple laughing in their kitchen, the glow of warm light spilling onto the grass. It made me think about how easily we confuse proximity for love. Just because someone's under the same roof doesn't mean they're close. When the clock struck midnight, I made myself tea, packed the last of my things, and sat quietly until dawn. The air before sunrise has a sound, not silence, exactly, but something softer, like the world holding its breath. That's when I knew it was time. Lily was still asleep. I left her a note on the kitchen table with a little heart drawn next to her name. "Be good, my sweet girl. Grandma loves you always." Next to it, I placed the drawing she'd given me, the one with 3 figures and no father. I wanted Daniel to see it, even if he never understood it. When I lifted my suitcase, it felt heavier than it should have, not because of what was inside, but because of everything I was carrying that couldn't fit the years, the mistakes, the silence. I looked around the kitchen one last time, the same room where I'd been told to wash the dishes, the same sink where I'd scrubbed away my pride. It was spotless now, almost too clean, empty of love, but shining with finality. I stepped outside just as the sky began to lighten. The world smelled like rain and possibility. The grass was wet beneath my shoes, and a soft wind brushed my face. For a moment, I turned back to look at the house, Daniel's house, not mine. A shadow moved behind the curtain, but I didn't wait to see who it was. Some doors don't need to be slammed to close. Some just need to be walked away from, and so I did. The train rocked gently beneath me, the world sliding past in a blur of gray and green. I watched the fields and rooftops drift by, and tried to feel the weight of freedom. It didn't come right away. Leaving rarely feels like victory. At first it feels like loss. Wearing quiet clothes, I reached my small apartment by afternoon. The key was stiff in the lock. The air inside smelled faintly of dust and old books. I opened a window and let the city breathe back into the room. The noise of cars and footsteps below sounded strangely comforting, proof that life continued somewhere outside my thoughts. That first evening, I didn't unpack. I boiled water for tea, sat by the window, and listened to the kettle whistle. The sound filled the silence that had followed me home. It was the first thing that didn't ask anything of me. The days that followed blurred into a gentle routine: grocery lists, morning walks, quiet meals eaten while the radio murmured in the background. At night I read until the letters swam on the page, then fell asleep in the middle of sentences that didn't need endings. Sometimes I woke, expecting to hear Lily's laughter down the hall, but the only sound was the clock ticking. Even loneliness has a rhythm once you get used to it. A week passed before the first letter arrived. It wasn't from Daniel, it was from Clara. Her handwriting was neat but uncertain, as if every word had been considered twice. She wrote that Lily asked about me every day, that she missed our breakfasts and the stories about the garden we used to have. Clara said she hoped I was resting, and that the house was quieter now. There was no bitterness in her words, only a tired kind of gratitude. At the bottom she had written, "Thank you for teaching Lily that kindness is strength, not weakness." I folded the letter carefully and left it on the table. For a long time, I stared at the empty page behind her words, thinking of all the things we never said to each other. Sometimes silence is the gentlest language two women can share. 2 more weeks passed before Daniel called. His name lit up on my phone screen, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. I almost let it ring out, but old habits are hard to break. When I answered, his voice was calm, polite. "Mom," he said, "I just wanted to know if you got home all right." "I did," I said, "thank you." A pause stretched between us. Then he sighed. "Clara's been distant. I think she blames me for you leaving." I didn't answer right away. Finally, I said, "People don't blame without reason, Daniel." He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "You made it sound like I threw you out." "I didn't have to," I replied softly. "You made it clear I didn't belong." Another silence, this one longer, heavier. Then a small exhale, almost like defeat. "I didn't mean it like that," he said. Things have been hard." "I know," I said. "Life's hard for everyone, but how we treat the people who love us shows what kind of hard we choose." He didn't speak again. I heard him breathing, and for a second I thought he might cry. But then he said quietly, "Take care of yourself, Mom," and hung up. The phone felt cold in my hand. I didn't call back. Some conversations end exactly where they should. That night, I stepped onto the balcony. The city lights shimmered below like scattered memories. A soft breeze brushed my face, carrying the faint scent of rain. For the first time in a long while, I felt something close to peace. Not joy peace. It's quieter, humbler, but it stays longer. I looked up at the dark sky and thought of Lily. I pictured her sitting at a table somewhere, drawing with her crayons, a small sun smiling in the corner of the page. I hoped that when she grew up, she would remember that her grandmother once walked away not because she stopped loving, but because love sometimes needs distance to stay pure. A few days later, a small envelope arrived in Lily's handwriting. Inside was a crayon drawing, 3 figures standing on a hill under a bright yellow sun. This time there was a 4th figure, drawn smaller, standing a little apart from the rest, but smiling just the same. Underneath, she had written in blue letters, "Grandma has her own home now." I smiled and pinned it to the wall above my table. Every morning when I saw it, I whispered, "Yes, my love, I do." Life has settled into something simple now. I wake with the sun, open the window, let the air move through the room. I cook for one, water the plants, listen to the hum of the world outside. It isn't loneliness anymore. It's space that belongs to me. Sometimes I think of Daniel. I wonder if he ever stands at the sink washing dishes and remembers the day he told me to do the same. Maybe one day he'll understand what it cost. Maybe he won't, but either way, the lesson has already been lived. When people ask me if I miss my family, I tell them I do, but I've learned that missing someone and needing them aren't the same. Love can exist quietly, even at a distance, like a candle burning behind glass. So tonight, as you listen to my story and the night settles around us, I hope you remember this. Respect should never have to be begged for, and sometimes the bravest thing a mother can do is walk away with grace. That's what I did, and in the stillness that followed, I finally heard my own heart answer back, not with regret, not with bitterness, just a simple, steady truth: I'm free. If you're young and still figuring out the shape of your life, listen to me for a moment. Parents are not perfect, not a single one. We stumble, we worry, we love in clumsy ways. We give up parts of ourselves so quietly that you might never notice until you look back and realize how much of your world was built on their tired hands. When we get old, we don't need repayment. We don't need you to build us thrones or turn your life upside down. We just need gentleness, a kind word, a moment of patience, a reminder that we're still part of your story, not a chapter you've already finished. One day, the house that feels too small for us will feel too empty for you, and the voice that sometimes nags you will be the silence you'd give anything to hear again. So call your mother back. Sit with your father, even when he says nothing at all. Let them tell the same story twice. It means they still want to be known. Respect doesn't cost you anything, but withholding it can cost you the kind of peace you'll search for your whole life. Don't wait to learn what I did too late. That love, once taken for granted, turns into memory far faster than you think. So be kind now, because one day, you'll look in the mirror and see your parents' eyes looking back at you, and you'll understand everything they never said.